DW Africa Link.
When Yoweri Museveni assumed office in 1986, many Ugandans hoped he would bring the peace and stability they had long awaited. Nearly 40 years later, that optimism has faded. Widespread arrests, abductions, and intimidation, from shutting down major media houses to detaining government critics, have left many Ugandans fearful and silent. As democratic space diminishes, anxiety is rising, and this prompts a critical question: what is fueling the rapid decline of democracy and governance in Uganda? This is Africa Link, the podcast that connects you to the stories that matter across Africa. I am Ajua Tinkrama Domina, your host for today.
Africa Link, every weekday here on DW.
Uganda is experiencing one of its most turbulent political periods in decades. The country's largest independent media house has been taken off air, while opposition figures have been abducted or detained. At the center stands General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, Chief of Defense Forces and son of President Museveni, whose public directives and endorsement of arrest, often broadcast on social media, have raised questions about Uganda's political trajectory. Civil society groups, rights organizations, and international partners are sounding the alarm. Now, many Ugandans are questioning whether this marks a tightening of entrenched authoritarian rule or signals the start of a gradual transfer of power. To help unpack these developments, I'm joined by Godbatu Muchava. He's Associate Director of the Great Lakes Institute for Strategic Studies, as well as DW correspondent Frankie Yiga in Kampala. Godba, I'm starting with you. If you look at Uganda's civic space, would you say democracy is shrinking?
Yes, exactly. Essentially, democracy in Uganda is not shrinking. It has been reversing. And the reversals have been actually over a long period of time, only that whenever it has been talked about, not much attention has been paid to the reversals. The democratic reversals in Uganda can be said to probably have started sometime around 2005, when the first major constitution amendment was made to remove term limits from the constitution. This is presidential term limits. Under the 1995 constitution, the framers of the constitution had built a number of safeguards that would stop a president from ruling for long. These included presidential term limits. They included age limit on a person who can be president, and then a periodic elections every 5 years. Now, these safeguards have been systematically removed. The elections have basically been hijacked to the extent that now you can't even know who actually manages elections. So to that extent, then you realize that as long as a ruler stays in power for long, the history has all these cases all over that shows that these rulers invest in demobilizing institutions of citizenship, dissolving alternative centers of power to be able to hold on to power. And civil society is one of the alternative centers of power because civil society organizes citizens. The media is an alternative center of power. The civic organizations like churches and NGOs and economic associations, professional bodies, all these are alternative centers of power. Opposition political parties are alternative centers of power. Long-serving leaders normally make sure that these institutions are disempowered so that they don't mount a challenge to them. And that's what we have seen since 2005, that the current regime of President Museveni, who has been now in power for 40 years, has systematically removed all the semblances of freedom, of the right to freedom, right to assemble, right to speech, to be able to weaken all these institutions.
Thank you for that breakdown. Frank, we heard about, the shutdown of the Nation Media Group and some of its subsidiaries. Last 2 weeks, we also heard about the arrest, of the veteran politician Miriam Matembe. We've also heard a lot of other abductions and arrests as well. What is actually happening on the ground as far as democracy, freedom of speech, freedom of, expression, that goes contrary to the current government? How does it look like?
Back in the day, things were done undercover. These irregularities, political irregularities and anomalies were done undercover. You would hardly tell that so-and-so is in charge of such an action that has been committed, such a crime that has been committed. That's why we say that the difference between President Museveni and the previous heads of state was he's smarter and he's educated. Back then it was the case, but as of now, it is now bare knuckle. I mean, they don't mind what they do in broad daylight. They don't mind who does what. I mean, they let everyone know that this action has been, or crime has been committed, or this action has been activated because so-and-so is in charge. And it's all that. I mean, arresting people arbitrarily, and then also arresting political leaders, abducting, torture. We've seen all these things happen in broad daylight, unlike before. And a lot is happening, and we're seeing it happen. So that is as far as we have reached. Politically, like the arrests we've seen recently of Miriam Matembe, of the National Unity Platform vice president, who was released and then rearrested again. And then so many journalists being arrested, bloggers. Everything is done in broad daylight, and we know who does it and why they do it. Recently, during the State of the Nation address, the president came out boldly and told us, yes, he's in charge of whatever is happening.
When you talk about the people who are doing it and how it seems like they are brazen about it, they are owning up to it. And one, example that we all see is the president's son, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba. Whether it is, in arrest or just talking about how much power he has, what really would you say is the power that the president's son has, Frank?
Well, the power that he has is the power in the adage that the apple didn't fall far from the tree. Because constitutionally, he has his powers are limited to the position of the chief of the Defense Forces, CDF, as a commander. He manages and oversees the operations of the army. He does not have independent constitutional authority to govern the country, make laws, or replace civilian institutions. For now, at least, we see, which is contrary to the law, he has some influence, as they make it seem, in the executive. He has some little powers in the legislature and the judiciary. So those are the powers we have. I mean, he's walking in the shadows of the president as a son. And it's all confusing to us as civilians. It's not clear because he also has an organization called PLU, the Patriotic League of Uganda. And it is a civic organization. It's like a political party in the making, and it wields so much power to the extent that it has powers in parliament. It has MPs under its name. We've seen him, engage in so many activities, civil activities, political, and all that. So we don't know how much power he has. But all we know, being the son of the president, constitutionally, he's not supposed to have any political powers. But somehow, because the apple didn't fall far away from the tree, perhaps it is in that sense that he's using his powers.
Godba, do you see a grooming happening here?
I've written about this before in 2021. Essentially, a colleague of mine and I wrote a paper entitled Uganda's Political Transition Scenarios to 2026 and Beyond. And we predicted most of the things that are happening now, but also the one consequential conclusion we made is that Museveni's mental programming is that he is a life president. So whoever discusses issues of succession or transition or whatever name so-called, I think that they have to understand that as long as Museveni is alive, he's going to be president. And therefore, all these other people, including Muhoozi, they are exercising rented power. In other words, Museveni can today change Muhoozi's fortunes and maybe send him an ambassador to Russia. I am not sure that Muhoozi would say no. But in the current power architecture, Museveni clearly needs Muhoozi as the stick to be able to enforce his regime survival operations, because in our scenarios paper, we basically argued that the most likely scenario, because Museveni is potentially and inherently a life president, he's going to have to unleash a lot of violence on the population to subdue it and subjugate it, to allow the life presidency project to continue. And I think Museveni, in his character and his history, he probably doesn't have the will to be able to unleash the levels of violence that are necessary to achieve that objective. So he has found his son and made him the instrument to be able to do that. My view is that the president, what he has done is that, one, he wants to be a life president. As long as he's alive, he's going to be president. And all he's doing is to make sure that he weakens the institutions of state, makes himself and his family the most important and consequential institution of state, and so that in the event that he's gone, then it naturally follows that Muhoozi could actually be the president. Because we saw a similar situation in Chad, where when Idris Deby died, even the international community sat and felt like the only person who could hold the country together was Idris Deby's son. So I think that that's the kind of scenario that we should envisage in Uganda if Ugandans do not challenge and resist and stop this trend that is happening now.
Now, what you have said, brings a very key question in my mind about the people themselves, citizens. We have long heard that power resides in the people, in a democracy, it's for the people, by the people, and for the people. What power really does the Ugandan citizen have to decide who should rule over them? Do they have any power at all?
Right now, beyond the constitutional declaration, Ugandans do not have power. They have become powerless. And the process of disempowerment has been very choreographed, very systematic, and consistent. So right now, you can say that the power belongs to, as I said, the power belongs to Museveni. Really, for a president to come out and own the level of criminality that is going on in the country. In other words, he basically says everything that is being done, I know it, and it is being done on my behalf. I think that's a normal, and so in terms of the power relations, all that the president has been trying to do is to change the power relations, shift the power from the people to himself, and himself meaning the military. The 2026 elections, that's the election that happened in January, was essentially, I've always characterized it as a criminal military operation. This was the first time, even when the other elections were so bad, including the 2021 elections where more than 100 of our people had to be killed for us to elect the president, I think that the 2026 elections crossed the threshold where the military took over the entire election exercise. Actually, it took over the election of the NRM primaries and then the general elections or the parliamentary elections. And so that's basically how you usurp power from the people. And before that, Parliament had been bamboozled into enacting the UPDF Amendment Act that essentially was now the formal transfer of power from the citizens to the military. So there is a huge contestation right now, but of course, the Museveni with the army and all the instruments of the coercion is winning the contest.
Right. Frank, from where you sit as a journalist, what have you seen to be the role of a lot of the other constitutional institutions like Parliament, like the court, like, the Ugandan Communications Commission, for instance, in the case of the closure of, these media houses? What has largely been the role of these institutions, and are they playing the role well?
Definitely not. They're not playing, not only Uganda Communications Commission, so many government institutions, agencies, are under siege. Just like it is with the Electoral Commission, just as it is with the judiciary, the courts of law, Parliament, none of those institutions are playing their role. Recently, we had the chairperson of the Uganda Human Rights Commission lamenting that power is being misused. Power from the appointing authority, who is the president. She resigned recently. Why? Because the body is not playing its constitutional mandate, just like other bodies are not doing so. The police are not fair. They are discriminatory in the operations. The army, the courts of law. Recently, the president also said, I wouldn't call it now, the State of the Nation address like God wants me to. The recent address by the president, he said that he challenged bail to offenders, to the political prisoners, especially those who have criminal cases, that they should not be granted bail. You see, so he used up the powers of the judiciary. So none of those institutions is operational without the consent, authorization of the president. So that clearly tells that everything is on remote control. Whatever is decided from the powers that be is what happens, no matter what.
Now, let me ask you your last question before I go back to Godba. When Museveni was coming into office, in 1986, he made certain promises of peace, stability, and all of that. Now, if citizens look back, onto those promises and what is being fulfilled or what is happening now, are they hopeful that there can be change in the system?
Okay. Before looking at the change of the systems, people have here, there's the way they compare Museveni by saying that if the Museveni of then met the Museveni of today, they would clash and crash. When he came to power in 1986, he promised Ugandans heavens on earth, that it won't be just a mere change of guards. We had hopes and things, everything was moving according to the script. We're all happy, excited. At least our parents told us that things were working according to their hopes. But of late, of course, along the way, we realized that people were hoodwinked, much as we appreciate some contributions like peace, security, and many others, maybe improvement of the economy in one or the other. We do appreciate that. But along the way, things backtracked and went off trail. But of course, Ugandans now are hoping for the best. All they are looking to achieve in the near future, if all goes well, they want to see more employment for Ugandans, especially the young people. We have graduates, many of them complete their studies in universities, tertiary institutions, and then they go to the streets without jobs. When you go to schools, primary schools, secondary schools, it is like people are yearning for a conducive environment, decent infrastructure, proper facilities, a competence, education. Competence education is all that is lacking, and it's what they are yearning for. When it comes to, say, corruption, we lose so much in corruption, so much that you can imagine. People want to say corruption-free Uganda. Corruption begins from the top. We've seen billions, not millions, but billions of money being lost by big shots in the governments, ministers, directors in government, the former Speaker of Parliament, the recently arrested and prosecuted parliament staff that stole billions of money. We want to see corruption-free Uganda. We want to see a better health service. We want to see proper health care for all of us. You go to hospitals, there are no medicines. Roads are dilapidated. Everything seems to be moving at a snail pace or no sign of improvement at all. So it is what the Ugandans want to see. 40 years has been a long time. I mean, we deserve better than this. So we're hoping that perhaps things, now that we're seeing changes, maybe the president made changes in his cabinet. We're seeing younger ministers coming in, promising us changes that we are seeing them, unearthing corruptions, corrupt scandals, and prosecuting those that are involved in corruption. Perhaps we could see a ray of hope at the end of the tunnel.
Definitely. And 40 years indeed has been a long time. God, by your final words, what is the worst case scenario of how Uganda's democracy could deteriorate? And what do you think citizens or anybody who cares should do to avert that worst case scenario?
No, the worst case scenario is already with us, because the environment in which we are living, the violence that is played on our TVs and our social media, the trauma that the actions of the regime is subjecting our people, including young people, including children, on, is simply very disturbing. I think it is going to have a long-term effect on our psyche as a population. So the sooner that it stops, the better. I've been a proponent since 2017. I've been a proponent of a national dialogue process. My argument has been that our institutions of state are so broken today that they cannot provide a pathway to the future. And I can take the example just of elections, that we have a completely broken electoral system and a completely broken politics, that elections cannot be the pathway to the future, because all that has been hijacked by the military and the junta that is in charge of the country. So what must be done then is that we have to find, or I'm hoping that there are going to be some statesmen and women and our friends within the international community that have the courage to be able to push that the country comes together, whether with the leadership of President Museveni or not, that we sit on the table and talk about the future together. Because the future, there must be a new consensus on how the country is governed. We cannot have a family, a group of people called NRM, now a new group called the PROU. We can't have one group just overloading everything on the rest of the population, because the resistance can only grow. So I think that a national dialogue process, however it happens and whenever it happens, is the only pathway that a better future can be constructed for Uganda, and so that every Ugandan is able to enjoy freedom, is able to enjoy equal opportunity, and the population can share shared prosperity.
Very well. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I'm grateful for your time. You just heard Godba Tumushaba. He's an associate director at the Great Lake Institute for Strategic Studies. Earlier, you heard DW correspondent Frank Yiga in Kampala.
For analysts like Godba, Uganda's democracy has steadily eroded, resulting in the current crisis. Meanwhile, more citizens abroad are speaking out and protesting the system, while others use social media to challenge repression. Whether this period becomes a turning point or accelerates the slide into authoritarianism will depend on the choices of Uganda's leaders, its citizens, and the international community in the coming months. But for now, you can join the conversation by sharing your thoughts with us on Facebook and TikTok at DW Africa. Listen to us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcast. And don't forget to subscribe to our DW Africa YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. This show was co-produced and edited by Isaac Mugabe, and I am Ajua Tinkrama Domina. Bye for now.
DW. Made for minds.